Vikram Sampath, you're a man of many paths. So we're just trying to work out all the things you do. You're a Carnatic musician, right?
Yes.
You've run a sound archive, which is probably the only archive we have in India where we have old gramophone records, all of that put into an archive.
Yeah.
You've done a biography of the first Indian woman to make a gramophone record. Is that correct?
That's right.
You've done a history of Mysore.
That's right.
And of course, you're now known for the Savarkar books. There's a tendency, I think, among people who don't know you to put you in a box and imagine you came out fully formed from a shaka, waving a flag for Savarkar and saying, I will speak up for him. But in fact, there's much more to you than all of that. And even your Savarkar books are essentially not pamphlets or propaganda books. They are works of serious history based on years of research, are they not?
Yes, Vir. Thank you. It's such a pleasure always to talk to you.
No, thank you.
And so, in fact, I very serendipitously became an author and a historian.
How did that happen?
That was again, I must thank Tipu Sultan.
Oh, really? He was right behind you.
He's right behind us.
Yeah.
And in those days, in the good old days of Doordarshan, when there was just one channel we all watched, I'm sure you'd remember there was this wonderful serial, Sword of Tipu Sultan,
Yes,
by Sanjay Khan.
made by Sanjay Khan.
Sanjay Khan.
Scene of a fire.
Yes. And there was a lot of controversy in that serial because I think just to hype up Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan, who were actually the usurpers of the throne from the original Wadayar rulers of Mysore, they had to show the Maharaja and the Maharani in very poor light. The Maharaja was shown like this obese retard who was dancing with the court dancer. The Maharani, a typical scheming vamp of sorts. And there were lots of protests in different parts of Karnataka and not necessarily political, because I think given the immense contributions that the Wadayars did to the establishment of a modern, industrial, progressive Mysore state, which was what Karnataka was before, there's a lot of love and reverence for them even today. In fact, when the last Maharaja, Shrikanta Datta Wadayar, died a couple of years ago, the whole Mysore just shut down voluntarily without any political call or anything of that sort. So somewhere the apple cart was disturbed by this portrayal. And as you said, there was a fire in the studio. Sanjay Khan's face had got burnt and all of that. And a lot of Kannada newspapers here were saying this is the curse of the Wadayar for showing him.
I remember that, yeah.
For him being shown this way. So I was then a boy of 12 or 13 years of age who hated history in school, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All history classes meant kneeling down outside because I just couldn't memorize who succeeded whom and which war was fought in which era. But this particular episode somehow caught my attention that I need to know the truth behind the falsehood. And nobody from our family had any connection with Mysore. It was not as if there was some familial bond there. So, but then over the next 10 years, it meant going to Mysore, collecting a lot of information.
And you did this on your own?
On my own.
At your own expense, unasked for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely. As a boy of 12, 13, it was my parents' funded project. And they also, poor things, played along. My parents, my maternal grandmother.
But you were not interested in history. You were not good at history even. So why?
I don't know. There was some junoon there that I need to find out about this one king and queen. And I don't know what drew me there, destiny, serendipity. And every vacation meant going there, even while I was doing other things academically. And I met members of the royal family, old-timers there, archivists at the palace, and just kept gathering information. And then the interest grew to the entire dynasty, which was one of the longest reigning royal houses of India. 600 years that they ruled, from 1399 till independence.
Though in North India, we don't realize this because we were so obsessed with our own Maharajas in the North. Yeah.
And so that's one thing. So after 10 years of putting things together, I realized that there's not even a single book that was written on them from a modern perspective, which covered the entire span, which had political history, economic, social, cultural history, and more or less the evolution of Karnataka, modern Karnataka as a state. And so as Toni Morrison had said, if there's a book that you want to read and it hasn't been written yet, you must be the first one to write it. So that's how quite accidentally that first book came up.
So you started writing it at what age?
23, 24.
But for anybody, it's a uniquely ambitious thing to write a book because it's a lonely business.
It is.
You don't know who will publish it. You don't know how it will be received.
It is.
What made you do it?
I was a single child, very,
You're an only
introverted.
child. You're an only child.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So I was introverted, shy. Books and music were my only two companions. Didn't make too many friends then as now as well. So I think this was a nice, preoccupation for me, and my whole family participated in it quite surprisingly. We came from a very middle class, lower middle class family, literally trying to make our ends meet at that time. And so it really is an ode to even my
So then,
parents.
for your parents to finance you going off to Mysore and all that is a really great achievement. No, it's really a big sacrifice.
Totally. I mean, today any parent would say you're not even getting your grades in history. Why are you wasting your time and our money? But they would accompany me all the time to Mysore.
You're
sit
very
with me.
fortunate. No?
Totally. And music classes and all of that. And every time books were the only gift that I got. So right from a very early age, reading and particularly non-fiction and history came.
Were you very sporty as a child?
Not at all.
So you were a bit of a nerd, basically.
Nerd. Totally. So, so that's how quite accidentally this book came up, and
It took you how long to write?
So 10 years was the research, but that was not to write the book. It was just out of interest in collecting things. And about 2-3 years later, to put all that together in the form of a book. And I had a regular day job then.
What were you doing?
Financial analytics, because I had
keeping with the nerdishness.
Yes, I did a dual degree from BITS Pilani in mathematics and an engineering in electronics, and then an MBA in finance from SPJ in Mumbai. So I was with Citibank and Hewlett Packard and GE Money and all these places. And this meant the Mysore bug was for the night and the weekends. So while my teammates were going on team outings and malls and movies, I was going to archives. Nobody could understand what this man is up to or why this is of interest to him. So while I was working was when this book came up, and I thought I'll go back. This is a flash in the pan, a one book wonder, and I'll go back to my regular day job, literally cribbing every day that am I going to die one day, calculating the profit and loss of some American company which will do no utility to my life. But then destiny again had other plans. While I was in the Mysore Palace archives, again serendipitously I came across this name of Gohar Jan. She was the first Indian, the first woman of the entire subcontinent who recorded her voice commercially on the gramophone for the first time.
What did she sing?
Hindustani classical music.
Okay.
So in 1902, so when the gramophone company came from London, all over India, it was actually women who recorded. We men stayed away from technology.
I had no idea, really. That's very interesting.
And all these women, these are the days of Hira Mandi. So these women were of the Tavaif and the Devdasi communities, both in the north and the south. And Gohar Jan led the entire revolution, so to say. And in 3 minutes, which is all a gramophone disc could hold,
these were what, 75 RPM?
78 RPM,
78 RPM,
shellac discs.
Yeah.
So in 3 minutes, they had to compress something like Hindustani music, where one rag can go on for hours and hours, and do it like Pressy writing in literature. And Gohar somehow, managed to perfect this art, and she became a celebrity of her times, earning a lot of money, giving it back to the who's who of the country, a typical page 3 diva, the first diva of the country. Her photographs were appearing on matchboxes made in Austria. That was the
So she was really a big deal at that time.
Big deal at that time, but like all Tavaif stories, fell in love with all the wrong men who cheated on her, and then she was paupered.
There's a movie in this. No? Nobody's made one.
We've been trying, Vir. If you have anyone, please let me know.
Well, after the success of Hira Mandi, there will be a market now.
Correct. I think her story deserves to be told because it's just so much of color. And after being paupered, she found refuge at the Mysore court, and that's where she died in 1930, very lonely and forlorn, with none by her bedside to shed tears for her. And by chance, I saw her. There was just one page of her biography in the Mysore archives of visiting musicians, and it said she was the first dancing girl of India, first celebrity, born of a Hindu grandmother, an Armenian Christian father, and a British grandfather. Baptized at the Holy Trinity Church in Allahabad, and later converts to Islam and becomes Gohar Jan.
So she wasn't born Gohar Jan.
No, she was born as Eileen Angelina Yoward in Allahabad. And her mother and she then convert to Islam and become Tawaives. They were at the court of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. And that's where the gramophone company comes, because Calcutta was the capital of India then. And so, I don't know, something there again, I think I work on impulse. I said this story deserves to be told, and I had no clue how to do that. because here was a lady who died in 1930, Tawayef, so no legal heirs, no students, no family, nothing. And it was literally like searching for a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And so over the next 5 years, I chased her through the length and breadth of India and even outside. Azamgarh, where she was born, to Banaras, where she lived and converted to Islam, to Calcutta, to Madras, to Bombay, to Mysore, and even outside India to Berlin and London and all other places which had some connection with her. So, in fact, masquerading as her grandson, I even went to the Mysore hospital looking for her death certificate, which I actually managed to get.
Claimed you were a grandson.
Yes. Why would they give it to me otherwise?
Right.
And
Well,
also
the end justifies the means, but you got it.
I got it anyway. I also tried to find her grave through the Kabristan committee in Mysore, but could not find any there. So the first gramophone celebrity of this country lies in an unmarked, uncelebrated resting place in Mysore.
And would have been unremembered if it wasn't for you.
Yes, unfortunate, and that's also it says a lot about how we document and how we remember even famous people like her. I mean, common people getting, their memory getting awareness is okay, but someone like her who was a celebrity of her time
and a phenomenon,
contributed so much. But for her and women like her, I think at the time when microphones like this were not there, the Indian music industry would not have been what it is today, but for them. So this was one book that it just came out of nowhere.
You found a publisher?
Yes, I was lucky. Both even the Mysore one was with Rupa and company, and I was very clear that these books need to be with a national publisher, so that even the story of Mysore goes out to a national mainstream. It's not here located only to Karnataka. And Gohar also did very well. It won me the Sahitya Academy Award. It also won an ARSC International Award in New York for historical research. And she changed my life, literally. So I'd very accidentally...
When you were doing this and you were this award-winning author, were you still, during the day, calculating profits of American corporations?
Unfortunately, yes. But I think Gohar decided that enough was enough for me. Yeah. And it was her give back for whatever I'd done to resurrect her memory. So I used to give talks about her and the entire gramophone phenomenon. So by chance, I'd gone to the University of Queensland once in Australia.
In Australia.
Yeah, and it was a lecture on the gramophone history of India. And coincidentally, I had the heads of the schools of music and history in the audience. And they said, you've done so much work, so why don't you put this all together in the form of a PhD? And we'd be happy to offer you that. And again, serendipity. There was an Indian historian there, Professor Singhal, who had died with a bequest that any Indian scholar who comes here for a PhD, that could be used for that. So, and that was expiring in 6 months. And lo and presto, the scholar was there and the money had to be given to someone. So it was a nice coming together of many parts, and that's how I went.
It was almost like destiny led you there, no?
Yes, totally. And so when people ask me questions...
So did you get the PhD?
I did.
So you're Dr. Sampath?
Yes.
Oh, I should remember that.
Yes. And also during the time of research on Gohar Jan, since I also have a musical background, I wanted to hear her voice and how it sounded. And that led me to a completely different alley, what you mentioned about the archive. And I realized that we in India don't have a national sound archive. And all these audio inheritances, cultural inheritances lie in chor bazaars and raddi shops across India, totally uncared for. And with a fellowship in Berlin, I'd actually traveled across Europe to Vienna, Paris, London, Berlin, and saw that there are so many national archives which also had a lot of holdings of Indian recordings.
Right.
For instance, in Berlin, you had this archive called the Laut Archive, which has about 200 recordings of Indian prisoners of war of the First World War.
Really?
Speaking in their native languages. And all over, everyone kept asking me, doesn't India have a national sound archive? And I had to say very sheepishly that no, we don't care much for our history.
We still don't have a government or
official. Still don't have.
It's just what you started.
Yes. And there are some other private archives, but all of them expect the listener to go there and listen in situ. In today's day and age, where everything is available at the click of a button on your hand, cell phones, I don't think there's a need for people to travel and go somewhere, especially if it's out of copyright. So this archive started in 2011 called the Archive of Indian Music, and that was completely with the support of Mr. T.V. Mohandas Pai. And so he said, why don't run behind governments? Start it as a private initiative, and I'll provide the initial, seed capital for
So
it.
this is recent or during his Infosys days?
He just, I think, transitioned out of 2011. That's how this came up, and we've collected about 15,000 records from shanties, chor bazaars, and all of that, and digitized it, and free of cost. It's uploaded on SoundCloud, Archive of Indian Music. Anyone types, you can listen to Gohar Jan, Zohrabai, Janki Bai, the first recording of M.S. Subbulakshmi as a 10-year-old child, really? And the first ever recording of Janagan Man and Vande Mataram by the Vishwa Bharati Chorus, the only recording of Gandhi on the gramophone in 1931.
Talking about what? This is a speech?
So this was at the Round Table Conference, and I think some people came and asked him to say something, and he said, I won't say anything political, so I will talk about spirituality. And this is called Gandhi's message, the spiritual message of Gandhi. And he talks about what is God and what is, so typical Gandhi, not talking
in
about
English. This was
in English. And I found it at Chandni Chowk in Delhi, in a shanty where...
everybody now, when you ask them what Gandhi's voice was like, think of the movie portrayals of Ben Kingsley. What was his voice actually like?
A very feeble, I think people
that reedy, feeble voice of caricature. It was
that. In fact, your listeners can go to the archive and it's there, Gandhi's spiritual message.
How do they go on? Just
to soundcloud.com and then type Archive of Indian Music, and then you have the entire list of tracks in which Gandhi's voice is also there. There's Subhash Chandra Bose's address to Indians from Tokyo.
And did he have this booming voice of a movie?
Yes, and very flamboyant, very... You can say a lot about the voice. You
can tell a lot about the person, the way they talk, no?
Exactly. Yeah. So this archive also kept moving around. So that's what... So all of them who say this person just landed out of somewhere after a certain milestone in our political history, I was doing my work quietly and, much before media or the country's attention caught up with it. So
no, you were always a scholar.
Yeah.
And a nerd. And an obsessive.
And an introvert.
So how does Savarkar enter your consciousness? Because that's what you're probably best known for at the moment.
No? Yeah. So Savarkar, it's very natural because half of my lineage is Maharashtrian. My mother was a Maharashtrian. My father is a Tamil.
There are many famous Maharashtrians. Why not Shivaji? Why Savarkar?
No, I think there was a lot of talk about him in the maternal home and in hush-hush voices. I also knew that some elements of our maternal family, they were also victims of the 1948 anti-Brahmin riots that shook Maharashtra after the death of Gandhi. And because Godse and Apte were Maharashtrian Brahmins, I think a lot of Brahmins faced, a carnage of sorts, which goes undocumented. None of them have got justice. So there was talk about all this in the maternal home. And I remember that in my growing up years, even though I was kneeling down outside class, the CBSE textbooks didn't cover Savarkar, didn't even mention his name those days. I don't know how it is now. So whatever little I'd heard about him was then. But I think the true inspiration should be Mani Shankar Iyer, because you remember when the Vajpayee government put up a plaque in Port Blair.
That's right. And there was a portrait in Parliament also, right?
Yes, portrait in Parliament, which
Sonia Gandhi boycotted and the Congress criticized. I remember that.
Yeah, and Mani Shankar Iyer, when he became the petroleum minister, I think threw away that plaque and had a lot of invectives about Savarkar hurled that time. So my interest was piqued in him at that point. I started reading a lot.
Were you political at that stage?
I never am. Even now, I'm not political.
You weren't.
Yeah, so your personal affiliations could be whatever, but I've not been ideologically linked to any organization, not been a member of any group. So I started reading a lot, and since I can understand Marathi and there are people at home, I started reading him immensely. And then as time passed, I saw that he was intruding contemporary political discourse like I think very few figures of the past do. And particularly in the run-up to 2014, you had Rahul Gandhi going on an offensive, continues to, I think, till Uddhav Thackeray stopped him in this path. And, the Prime Minister going to Port Blair and paying his respects there. governments in so many Congress ruled states spending so much of time on whether you should have a Vir or a Mafi Vir and all these kind of things about him.
But that's relatively recent, no? In Mrs. Gandhi's time, there was
Yes.
never any controversy.
Mrs. Indira Gandhi. You mean.
Miss Indira Gandhi. Yeah, there's an important road in Mumbai called
Correct.
Vir Savarkar Marg, etc.
No, and including, I think, when Savarkar died in 1966.
Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi made a statement saying what a great patriot he'd been.
That his is a very unique role in the freedom movement and constitutes a chapter of courage and bravery and patriotism. There's no need for her to say.
So when does all that change?
I think it's in the 2000s, once Vajpayee government came in and the Congress particularly saw. Till then, I think they could afford to be generous to him.
And magnanimous.
Yeah. And because Indira Gandhi, even I think the 100th year of Savarkar's birth, she got a stamp out in his honor. She got a documentary film made. And I think 40,000 rupees from her own account she gave to a memorial in his honor. Yeah. So why would she do that if he was a traitor, Gandhi murderer, and all of that, which later on started coming out? I think once the BJP came to power, and they started celebrating him in the way they did.
But Congress, that also, I mean, the Jansangh days and all that, you knew that Savarkar was something of an icon, but you never heard that much about him until you did at the beginning of this this current century.
True.
So it was almost as though they needed an icon and they created his legend, sometimes detracting from what the real man was, but making him a sort of alternative Gandhi. Correct. And the Congress felt obliged to pull him down.
Correct. That's probably...
Neither had that much to do with the man. I mean, your book is about the man, it's historical, but something like 90% of people who debate Savarkar on television have no clue about who he was or what he did.
Totally. Both sides, both the pro and the anti.
Exactly.
And truth be told, Savarkar was never part of the RSS. His brother Ganesh Savarkar was a member of the founding members along with Dr. Hedgewar. But Savarkar, and particularly when Golwalkar was the Sarsang Chalak, they had a constant running feud.
That's right.
And in fact, so the RSS never wanted to, become a chaperone for the Hindu Mahasabha that Savarkar led. And in fact, Savarkar is infamous to have said that if at all there is a tomb of a RSS Swayam Sevak and it has an epitaph which claims what are the achievements of a Swayam Sevak, it will have only 3 lines. He was born, he joined the RSS, he died. So you can imagine the amount of rancor that...
And Savarkar also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, believed that one reason why Hindus tended to be namby-pamby was because they didn't eat beef.
Not so much of
Didn't
beef.
he say that?
No,
is that a misquote?
No, that's a misquote. So he said he didn't consider the cow as a worship-worthy animal.
Okay.
But he said if the cow is used as a shield to insult the Hindus, then you need to stand up for it. And he quoted historical episodes where, just to ensure that the Hindus did not attack, the Muslim armies kept an army of cows as a shield. And so he said, in the process of protecting an animal, you lost your country, your honor, and everything. Okay. So does that make sense? It's a utilitarian animal.
So the beef thing is not true.
No,
because it's often quoted, which I'm asking you.
Not at all. I don't think he ate beef to himself, nor did he advocate eating beef. He said...
Was he a vegetarian?
No, not at all. No, not at all.
That's unusual.
That's completely right from his younger days. And there's one apocryphal story of him and Gandhi meeting when they were young men, when Savarkar was studying in London in 1906 or so. And Gandhi had come there to the India House, which was the hotbed of all revolutionaries who were there in London.
This is the India League days? Or
no, India House. 1905, 1906.
Oh, that long?
Yeah. Okay. So you had Shyamji Krishnavarma, Madam Bhikaji Kama and all these people there, Madan Lal Dhingra, all of Savarkar's associates. And Gandhi is supposed to have come there and he sees Savarkar cooking prawns in the kitchen and offers some to Gandhi, and he says, no, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat. And so he's supposed to have said, if we cannot eat together, how will we fight together? And we want men who will eat the British alive, and these are just boiled fish. It's an apocryphal story, but it just shows that the two men collided with each other, their thought processes. There's another episode, 2 years later, Gandhi again comes to the India House, and this is the time of the Dashera. And so during the Dashera, the India House people organize talks and all of that. And Savarkar, Gandhi first talks about Ram Rajya and how, he doesn't want to talk about political violence. He would like to talk about an ideal government. And then Savarkar goes on and contradicts him on stage saying even to establish Ram Rajya, Ram had to go and kill Ravan and take Sita back. He didn't sit there in Satyagraha and Ravan said, okay, take her back. So, and we're celebrating this in Dashera, when on the 9 days you have the Devi shown, massacring all the demons. So, in the Hindu philosophy, absolute non-violence is not a part of Hinduism at all. All the gods are shown with, astra and shastra and so on, to show that if there is adharm, it's your duty, bounden duty, as even the Gita says, to annihilate your opponent, whoever that might be your relative or your own teacher or anybody. So I think that is where fundamentally these two men never agreed with each other. Their approach to freedom, both of them obviously wanted India to be free. But how do you go there? I think they differed. And the other important thing was also the Hindu-Muslim question, where Savarkar thought that Gandhi was going way deep into the whole idea of appeasement, particularly during the Khilafat support.
What exactly was Savarkar's position on Muslims? Because it's now been caricatured, but what was the truth?
So, I think it's all a product of its times, Vir, because, his Hindutva pamphlet also comes up only in 1923 when the Khilafat has just happened, where Gandhi, the Caliphate movement, it's a pan-Islamist movement to re-establish.
Khilafat is just another version of the word caliphate, right?
Yeah, it is. And so, in Hindi, when you say Khilafat, it seems like it's Angrezon ke Khilafat. But this was to re-establish a Islamist state in Turkey, when the people of Turkey did not want the Sultan. They wanted Ataturk to come to power. So here we were bartering the support of Indian Muslims on that premise that, first the Khilafat was launched and then the non-cooperation was pegged on to that. And both ended in a disaster, because Gandhi had promised that within 1 year you're going to get Swaraj as well as the Caliphate re-established. Both obviously couldn't happen. And the backlash was lots and lots of Hindu-Muslim riots all through the 20s, starting with the Mopla carnage, and all of India rocked by communal riots in which Hindus were targeted. And so it is in that context that this Hindutva comes in, the pamphlet, where he defines who a Hindu is through that famous 2 lines, that anybody who considers this land as his Pitra Bhumi and Punya Bhumi, land of his forefathers and his holy land, not in terms of religion. And he always emphasizes that this has nothing to do with theological aspects of Hindu religion. It is more of an answer to political Islam, which was already trying to, I think, the seeds of partition were getting sown right with the formation of the Muslim League.
Was Savarkar a political Hindu, or was he a sort of devout Hindu?
Not a devout Hindu at all. I don't think he believed in rituals. He was not an atheist. I wouldn't say an atheist, because he read a lot of philosophy, even in his Port Blair times, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And so he was a thinking Hindu who was not a ritualistic person. In fact, even his own wife, when she died, he refused to do the Shraddh rituals for her. And he put in his will that even for me, you're not going to do all this because I don't believe in these things. So that's sort of a very progressive minded, so to say, non-ritualistic. But politically, he said, he felt that unless the Hindus organize themselves in Sangathan, and that's how the Sangathan movement of the Hindu Mahasabha came out, where you had to answer the waves of political Islam which were raging. Hindutva, according to what he put it, was probably Hinduism that resists and also Hinduism that reforms, because you can't become en bloc resistance unless you remove the divisions. So contrary to popular perception, Hindutva proponents have been anti-caste system, including Savarkar in his 13 years in Ratnagiri. He propagated intercaste dining, intercaste marriage, complete erasure of untouchability. There was an Asprishya Ganpati which had to be celebrated, where the lowest caste of the Maharashtrian social order would be the pujari, and even the Brahmin had to go and touch his feet and worship. Where schools, children of all castes, including the so-called untouchables, could sit and study. So he said, unless your only identity becomes Hindu and not Kayast and Brahman and Rajput and all these, you're going to be splintered into small fragments and gobbled up by the colonial power, by the rising Islamist power. So I think there also there's a lot of misunderstanding about Hindutva and caste also.
Now,
Because
there were times when he was with the Hindu Mahasabha, he had these views, and the RSS also existed. So, what was their attitude to each other?
I think till the time Hedgewar was alive, which was 1940, they were quite okay with each other. And the problem arose after that,
Golwalkar?
because I think Golwalkar had a different vision for the RSS. Even Hedgewar, towards the end of his life, the Hindu Mahasabha had started taking the RSS for granted, that you are our Boy Scouts. And including B.S. Munje, who was the predecessor of Savarkar in the Hindu Mahasabha, who the Sainiki-karan, the militarization drive that he started, began at that time, inspired largely by what he saw in Italy with Mussolini, when he went to the second roundtable conference. Munje makes a detour, goes to Italy, meets him. 1931, that was something, it was an aspiration to look for, that these are fighting colonial forces. And so he came back, and the military school in Nashik was also formed by Munje. And he had expected that the RSS would follow suit in this. And Hedgewar probably tried to wriggle himself out. But when it came to Golwalkar, he wanted it to be a completely socio-cultural organization, but which had tentacles within the government. In fact, in my book, I quote a lot of government intelligence reports where there is a sense of alarm that RSS people are infiltrating various, bodies.
So nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed since the British times. So they, like, it says there's no account of this organization, there's no membership documents and all of that. So there also nothing much has changed.
But, if you listen to critics of Savarkar, essentially not that many people know that much about him. It comes down to two things. One is his relationship with Godse and his alleged assassination in the Gandhi assassination, in which case he was actually acquitted. And the other is the apology he wrote. So let's talk about the Gandhi assassination first. What actually happened?
So that's a long, I think.
Okay, just don't praise it.
So I think,
okay, let me make it easier for you. Do you believe he had any involvement?
I don't think so. Because by, I think, 1945-46, he had receded from public space to a large extent. He'd had two heart attacks. He was almost on the deathbed. And I think at a very crucial time in the history of India, when the Shimla meet and all of that was going on with the Viceroy, you had, and the Hindu Mahasabha had come a cropper in the 1946 elections. So there was no representation of the Hindu Mahasabha anyway in the talks. And at that time, this guy was bedridden. And you had the Hindu Mahasabha was the only body till the very end they opposed partition. Till May 1947, when it was almost a no-brainer that India was going to be divided by then. At that time, in the lack of leadership, and Savarkar was seen to have become pacifist by some of the hot-blooded young members of the Hindu Mahasabha. There was a Hindu Rashtra Dal, which was a counter to the RSS, which had been formed of young Boy Scouts, of which Godse and Apte and all these people were members. So even in his dying declaration in court, the testimony, Godse says that we were disenchanted with Savarkar and some of the old guard of the Hindu Mahasabha, because there's one occasion where he says they went and disrupted Gandhi's meeting, which he did because he had gone to a temple and recited ayats of the Quran, and then these people said, can you do the same and go to a mosque and chant Hanuman Chalisa and expect the same brotherhood? And Savarkar is supposed to have admonished them, saying, we are not going to oppose these people, they are now our leaders after independence has come. And this assassination, etc., was okay as long as they were colonial masters. You don't do that to our own leaders. So at that point, there was some sort of break.
So given all that, if this is true, it's very unlikely he would have been part of a conspiracy to kill Gandhi.
Exactly. And in my book, in fact, I've gone through 11,000 pages of the Gandhi murder trial case, which are there in the National Archives of India in Delhi. In that, it's very clear that Godse and Apte and others, they hatched the plot to kill Gandhi as late as 12th of January 1948. That's hardly 18 days
That's
before.
what say that, yeah.
Yeah, and they were not professional killers, they were amateurs. So if you read that chapter, it's like a typical comedy of errors, unfortunately. It's very, very Greek tragedy of sorts, where these guys are running around to fetch a gun. They don't even know. On the morning of 30th January, they are doing practice sessions to actually put target because none of them knew how to do it. And
they were bungled at times.
They bungled once on 20th of January, where at the Birla House you had Madan Lal Pahwa actually hurl a bomb. Yeah, and he was caught. So for 10 days, the government of Maharashtra, the Bombay government, and the government of Delhi, they pretty much knew that there was a conspiracy to kill Gandhi. And this guy, Madan Lal Pahwa, had given in Urdu a testimony that this was our entire group, and Godse and Apte being, non-professional amateur killers, so to say, they had left behind clues at every stage. In a Delhi hotel where they had stayed, he'd left behind his shirt, which had NVG initials on his shirt, Nathuram Vinayak Godse. So any sensible government or intelligence unit which could have actually found out, the Nagarwala Commission, which was set up later, they knew that for 10 days Gandhi's life was like a sitting duck. So
within the Congress there was a theory that Morarji Desai prevented people from going ahead and investigating it, not out of any desire to see Gandhi killed, but because of his own illiteracy and arrogance.
There's lots of, I think, conspiracy theories about that. Abound.
Okay, so let's move on from Gandhi.
But even on that evening, Vir, he gets killed, I think, by 5:15 in the evening. The last meeting he has is with Sardar Patel, who comes there, and then Sardar Patel by then has left so in the Congress there's also a lot of attempt to posit all the blame on Sardar.
Why did he leave when he did?
Because Sardar had so many differences with Nehru by then that he had actually come to tell that to Gandhi that I'm quitting the government. He had stopped attending the Home Ministry, and there were murmurs that he was in talks with the Hindu Mahasabha, particularly from the central provinces, to probably join them or make a larger pan alliance with them and so on. So this was the last meeting which Sardar Patel and Maniben have with him, where Gandhi prevails upon them, saying, don't leave. You and Jawahar are like my two eyes and two hands, and I'll sort this out tomorrow. That tomorrow, unfortunately, never came, and he was killed within half an hour after that meeting.
Why did Sardar Patel then ban the RSS after the assassination?
I think it was, he had to prove his credentials more than...
because of these rumors
and all of that. And there also, this was a knee-jerk reaction. After the investigation, he says the RSS is not at all involved. But people don't talk about that. Even the Kapoor Commission, which went into the whole, details almost 20 years later in 1965-66, they say RSS had no role to play in it. It was a Savarkarite faction of the Hindu Mahasabha which involved itself, which is true. Nathuram and all these people, because in the Hindu Mahasabha then there were the Maharashtra faction, there was the Bengal faction of Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. So I think a lot of them, even if in my book I write about Shyama Prasad Mukherjee's conundrum that he had to face, because he was a minister in the government, and Nehru constantly kept putting pressure on him, and you had to be more loyal to the converted are always more loyal than the original. So he said, you try to disassociate yourself from the Mahasabha and so on, was the pressure put on him. And finally, in disgust, Mukherjee leaves the government and forms his own Jan Sangh, which is away from both the RSS that time and this. So I think that was a knee-jerk reaction, even without the investigations being done, for the Home Minister of the country to say such and such organization is involved. That really didn't have proof. Once the investigation and the trial was over, it became clear that the RSS at least had no role to play. It was a faction of the Hindu Mahasabha.
The other thing held against Savarkar are these apology letters.
Well, that gets overdone all the time.
I think they are pretty, you read them, pretty groveling letters.
I put all of them in the appendix to my book. There were 8 of them, I think. So he was a lawyer, and he knew that it was a very normal course of action for a political prisoner to seek, to put a yachika, I would not call it a maafinama. It's an application for parole, as it happens today. And at different points of history, the British government gave these benefits to the political prisoners. When the capital was being shifted from Calcutta to Delhi, when the World War ended, when the emperor came to India or so on, as goodwill. Even now it happens on important occasions. Prisoners who have held on for a long time are let off. So even here, this was the way, and most of the other prisoners. So Savarkar was acting as a spokesperson for most of the political prisoners. So Port Blair, the Kalapani jail, had about 100 political prisoners, most of them from Bengal, a few from Maharashtra, later Punjab, and so on. And they were all teenagers, late teens, early 20s. They didn't even know English. Whereas this guy was someone who had come trained from London in law. And so they called him Bada Babu. So he was literally the leader of the pack. And so if you see several of his petitions, including the 1917 one, he says, if my name constitutes an obstacle in the release of all the other prisoners, you can delete my name and release the others, and that would give me as much pleasure as my own release would do. So very clearly he was acting as a spokesperson for the others. And in 1913, there's a central government, the British government Home Department secretary, Craddock, Reginald Craddock, comes to Port Blair and he interviews some of these main leaders, which include Savarkar. It also included Barin Ghosh, Aurobindo Ghosh's brother who was there, several others who were there. And in his official report, he said, I had a half an hour meeting with Savarkar, and he claims he shows no remorse or regret for what he has done. And to release him would mean that the Bombay presidency, which had the revolutionary zeal, that would get reignited. So he's quite a dangerous fellow, and the revolutionaries are trying to get him out of jail. So the British government, in its official record, that was the best time he could have grovelled, fallen at his feet and say, I'm sorry, just let me go.
But he didn't in this meeting.
Yeah, he did not.
So when did they release him?
They released him in 1924.
Was there an understanding, as people say, that he would not take part in any political activity and they gave him a pension?
No, that was how everybody, including Sachindranath Sanyal. So most of these people would write these petitions, and even the British government knew that the petition was not worth the ink it was written on, because it was a ploy to just get out. And Sachindranath Sanyal goes out, he forms the HSRA, then he comes back, he's again imprisoned. So many, entries and exits were happening. So in the case of Savarkar, he was the last batch to be released from Port Blair. And there were these two rules, conditions. One was, I'm not going to participate in politics. And second, restricted only to Ratnagiri district in Maharashtra. And it was for a period of 5 years. Now, at the end of 5 years, when his case came up for a review, there also I've quoted the intelligence reports, the British constantly kept saying that this man is not to be trusted. We're seeing a lot of underground links of him and more so his brother, the elder brother, Ganesh Damodar Savarkar, with the revolutionary movement, even then, with Bhagat Singh, with Chandrasekhar Azad, and Sachindranath Sanyal, Rash Bihari Bose. All these people were connected in some loose form and communicating. The British intelligence had caught it. So what was initially just a 5-year, reclusive condition went on for 13 years. So every 2 years it used to get extended. Even 1937, when he was released, it was on the insistence of the Congress government of Bombay that they made it a precondition to form the government after the elections in 1937, the first election after the Government of India Act. So there they said, because the Congress by then wanted Savarkar to join them, and that was something that they really thought he would be an asset to them. So they got his release, but they were shocked that he didn't join them and instead went to a very decrepit Hindu Mahasabha and became its president. So this petition business, which if he was actually, conduit of the British or a stooge, they would not have increased his, confinement for 13 years. Every 2 years, the review said he's not someone who is reliable. And this pension thing also, it was given to several of the political prisoners. The revolutionaries in Bengal too, they actually got much more than him. He got 60 rupees, others usually got up to 100, 120 rupees. Because remember, most of these prisoners, including Savarkar, all their degrees were taken away from them. So his barrister degree from London, that was taken away. Even his graduation from Fergusson College, that also was taken away. So on paper, he was just a metric pass. So when he even wrote to the British government saying, can I continue my private practice? I have a growing family. That was not allowed. So with no means of survival and no means of employment anywhere, he was a freelance journalist in a newspaper he had started called Shraddhanand, in the memory of Swami Shraddhanand of the Arya Samaj, who was assassinated by a Muslim fanatic. So, in the absence of any means to survive, the British used to normally give pensions to several people, in which he was also included.
So it was not that unusual.
It was not unusual, and so whether it was apology letters, so many others wrote. I mean, Ram Prasad Bismil,
So-
Ashfaqullah Khan.
Okay, no, I can take all that
Yeah.
on board. We have two views of Savarkar. One is the view of what may be called the secular establishment of the last 20 years, not before that. And that view is that he was involved in the Gandhi assassination. He begged the British to let him go. He ended up being a stooge of the British, paid off by the British. That's the caricature we've discussed and you've given. The other is the view that many people on the right have, which is that he was the ideological equivalent of Gandhi. He was a great freedom fighter, but he's been denied the credit he deserves. Is the right-wing caricature accurate, or isn't that excessive as well?
It's undeniable that he was a great revolutionary of his times.
Yes. And that he was bright and a scholar. I don't think anybody disputes that.
Correct.
But in the same league as Gandhi?
I mean, I wouldn't want to compare two people.
But people do, no? That is the whole point now. That he's now their alternative Gandhi.
It could be in the sense that, as I said, these were two polar opposites of the freedom movement: the non-violent struggle and a violent revolutionary movement.
Yes.
That it would be no exaggeration to say maybe a close second to Tilak, but Savarkar was someone who inspired the revolutionary movement in India. And on that, the jury is out as to why we got our freedom. Was it because of the armed struggle which happened throughout, right from 1857 to 1946, when we had the naval mutiny in Bombay? And at every occasion, if you actually look at it dispassionately, whether it was the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms or the Morley-Minto reforms earlier, or the Government of India Act, they were all and the final freedom.
It was preceded by... No, I'm familiar with that theory. But let's go back to Savarkar, because things like the naval mutiny has a damn all to do with Savarkar.
No.
So therefore, is he really as important a figure?
No, you can't, obviously you can't herald a movement for so long, but he'd sown the seeds, and some of his books that he wrote, including on the 1857 revolution, those tended to become almost the Bible for the revolutionaries.
All that conceded.
Much later.
All that conceded. But the moral equivalent of Gandhi?
As I said, I wouldn't want to compare the two. He was
but people do, no? And you're his biographer, so you should be in a position to comment.
No, I would say both of them were important in their own ways. Gandhi as the leader.
They're sort of weaseling out of this one. No?
So Savarkar, I think, was a much more intellectual and thinking man than Gandhi was.
I don't think people dispute that.
Yeah,
Ram Gohar, who's hardly a dangerous fascist, says if you read what Savarkar has written, it's obvious he was a great scholar.
Yeah. So, I mean, not on all matters, whether it's modern science to industrialization to an urbanized Indian economy, to also social reforms and all of that. The gamut of his writings, the Savarkar Samagra Vangmay that he has written over 10 volumes, running to some 40,000 pages, is, I think, testimony to the fact that this was a very thinking scholar, an ideologue, a thinking man. And so was Gandhi. Gandhi also wrote on multiple things. So I would say
but Gandhi's claim to fame was not that he was a scholar, just that he was a popular leader. Savarkar was a scholar. I think people accept that they were different in those ways. But here's my question. Given that he was antithetical to the RSS, he had very little to do with the RSS, when that side looks for its great hero, why not Golwalkar? Why not any of these people? Why Savarkar?
Antithetical would be a little extreme. I think they had their differences of opinion within the larger...
He had differences with the RSS.
Umbrella, the saffron umbrella. I think if it had come to choose between the RSS and the Congress, he would have chosen the RSS. So, but it's
but he was not an RSS.
Yeah, it's like the BJP Shiv Sena type.
He was never an RSS.
He was never an RSS.
So why have they picked him?
Yeah, because
is there nobody within the RSS pantheon that they can put up?
Yeah, because I don't think the RSS was ever it was a social and cultural organization. Actually, Dr. Hedgewar, they should have ideally canonized him because
he had forgotten, no?
Totally forgotten even by the RSS.
Yeah.
I mean, not so much by the RSS. They write their books and so on, but those are not reached.
Golwalkar is now only mentioned when they're sort of editing out references to Hitler in his books and doing new editions.
That's true.
So is it that these guys were vaguely embarrassments and never Ram Guhagan, who I said, who praised, said if you read Golwalkar stuff and you read Savarkar's, there's no comparison the intellectual caliber that Savarkar had. So you think that it's odd that the people who remembered fighting for Savarkar's memory are people who weren't necessarily that keen on him when he was alive.
I don't think they're even remembering him now with all the gusto that they need to.
Do you think there should be more?
Yeah, of course, because they pick and choose, including a simple thing like the long-standing plea to award him a Bharat Ratna has not been done in 10 years of a BJP government.
Can you understand that? Because it would surely be popular with the BJP faithful. So why haven't they done it?
I know. I mean, it only comes in Maharashtra manifestos every election that we're going to do this time if we're given power. But this should go beyond that. If he's... So, I mean, Savarkar is uncomfortable for many people, including...
On both sides.
On both sides, for their own reasons. And that itself shows that the man was probably right. Because if you're badgered by both sides, everyone picks and chooses what is convenient to them. The left and the Congress side picks these apology letters, the Muslim hater and all those things, Gandhi murderer. Whereas even here, a lot of things that he said about cow protection or about the caste elimination or social reforms, I don't know how palatable they would be even to people on the right today. So that's why he is a political orphan, somewhere seated in the middle.
But a complex figure.
Very complex.
You've seen the movie?
I haven't seen the movie yet.
Why not?
It's still on my to-do list.
It's been a while, no?
Yeah. So I
is that like a diplomatic choice not to see it?
There's more to it,
yes,
which we can speak offline.
All right. Okay. But listen, I've just enjoyed talking to you so much, and I think the lesson in almost everything you do, apart from the nerdishness and the obsessions and all that, is that if you're a scholar, if you're a historian, you realize that nothing is black and white.
Correct.
The world is complex. You can take positions based on facts. The danger now, unfortunately, is too many positions are being taken on ignorance.
True, very true. And I think positions taken and also pigeonholing people into brackets and putting tags and labels on them without even reading them, without even understanding what is being produced. You're either with us or against us. I think this Bushism...
Which is a terrible thing for any civilization to be.
World over, I think this is an increasing phenomenon, right? With,
and in India, which is a country majority Hindu, where Hinduism is the most complex religion in the world, where allows for various shades of grey, has no book, allows for everything. It's a little sad we've been reduced to this.
That's true. That's true. I hope dialogues, discussions, and healthy debates.
And respect for each other's point of view.
And constantly we try to pull down others, and make personal allegations, slurs, controversies, which are needless and meaningless. Counter to a book is another book, which needs to happen.
You fight an idea with an idea, not with abuse.
Exactly.
I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Enjoy talking to you as well.